Hello 474 students. This video is a brief introduction to the Chapter 7 or Module 7 content related to technology and privacy in the workplace. In this chapter and throughout this module, we'll consider privacy, not only in the workplace, but also from a consumer standpoint. So we'll look at privacy as it pertains to employees, but we'll also look at privacy as it pertains to consumers. And I like to start this module with a little cartoon here. You can see this is the character Steve Jobs, and he's standing in front of them a map which says where everybody in the world is right now. So it's a funny joke suggesting that those who use Apple products are being tracked 24/7 by Apple. Alright, so as I said before, what we're primarily considering in this chapter has to do with privacy. Okay? With the tremendous increase in computer technology, we see a greater focus on privacy rights in general. So out of all the ethics topics that we'll cover in this course, I would say the right to privacy, and as it pertains to technology, is perhaps the most quickly changing topic area and perhaps the most popular one in term that you'll see in the media. I would say perhaps even more so than the focus on corporate governance, which we'll discuss in Module 10. I will say, though, that despite all the attention that we've seen for the topic of privacy as it relates to technology, there's quite a bit of confusion concerning the nature, extent, and value of privacy. So despite the fact that everyone would agree that we have a basic right to privacy, it's not entirely clear what that means and how we actually go about executing it. When we're talking about privacy, we can break it down into two sort of basic dimensions or concepts. Okay, so we have privacy as a right to be left alone within a personal zone of solitude. We might consider this in a workplace setting where we're interacting with our colleagues. We also can consider privacy as it pertains to the right to control information about oneself. And this would very much apply to both consumers as well as employees for a company. Now, although privacy as it pertains to technology is a slightly newer topic, certainly as we've seen the advancement of technology, we can go back and look at property rights. If you consider information as something that is a form of property, we can actually go back and rely upon hundreds of years of property rights laws and cases and so forth that we've seen in the court systems to help provide ourselves with some guidance. Okay. So the concept of property rights involves a determination of who maintains control over tangible and intangible, in this case, personal information. The funny cartoon here reads, it's the boss, he says, I need your Facebook password before I can hire you. If you're not on Facebook, I need you to join. Post a bunch of personal stuff you don't want me to know about. Basically suggesting that he wants to invade her privacy. Okay. So when we're talking about legal sources of a right to privacy, there are a couple of different ways in which we can draw upon a couple different areas. Of course, the Constitution. We can look at federal and state statutes. And we can also look at common law. Alright, so this is the body of law comprised of decisions handed down by courts rather than specified in any particular statutes or regulations. And I would say that in the instance of privacy, this is an area where we're able to get a lot of support as it pertains to common law. And that's because it's very difficult for federal and state laws and regulations to keep up with the advance in technology. They're trying, but it's difficult. A lot of times when we do go to court for privacy issues, whether it's Google or Facebook or Apple or one of the other technology giants who's on the cutting edge, I think when you're a company and you're working on the cutting edge, you're naturally going to violate some privacy rights. That's just the nature of being cutting edge. The courts will often go back and say, well, was there a reasonable expectation of privacy? And would a normal, reasonable person perceive this as an expectation of privacy, believe that they had privacy? Okay, and that's typically what they go and use as guidance. Did the worker have notice that there might be monitoring that would occur? As a consumer, did you have an expectation of privacy that you weren't going to be tracked with the GPS on your phone, or that all of your Google search history was going to be saved for all time? And essentially, we would say that there's an invasion of privacy when an employee had a legitimate and reasonable expectation of privacy. But we cannot say that an employee or a consumer has that expectation if there's actually been given notice that there is no real privacy expectation. Okay. Privacy then would be violated in the instance of employers when they impinge upon personal decisions that are not relevant to an employment contract. So a lot of it does for employees comes back to whether or not this is related to someone's job performance. Why are you collecting this information if it's not related to performance? Personal information also that is not relevant to the contract is collected, stored, or used without informed consent of the employee. And then ultimately, we'll talk quite a bit in this module about consumer expectations of privacy. So of course, we all use Apple products like iPods, iPads, the Apple computers. We use other phones such as Galaxy, from Samsung, and so forth. And they're starting to put, of course, computers in cars now. So there's more tracking being done and monitoring. And a lot of this can be done for good reason. So you'll have some exercises in this chapter about organizations that track you in a variety of different ways. So, for example, a lot of organizations have a lot of service industry companies have rewards cards. And I get tired of being asked, do you want a rewards card? Do you want a rewards card? And I say, no, I don't want a rewards card. And they're like, oh, but you'll save, X percentage of whatever it is that you're buying right now. And I'm like, I have like 20 rewards cards in my wallet. I can't fit another rewards card in there. And there are lots of reasons why they're doing this. And of course, one is that they can gain information about consumer demographics that they can use to actually better serve you. So there's a pro to it, but then there's also the con that you have your individual privacy potentially being violated, which is something that we'll talk about from a consumer's perspective throughout this chapter. Okay. And we, again, would come back to, do consumers understand that their privacy is potentially being violated? So Google was famously in trouble for their use of Gmail. Originally, when it first came out, they started customizing ads for individual users. I, for example, bought some handkerchiefs. I use handkerchiefs, and I purchased some probably at Amazon, who also I'm sure tracks your internet habits. And I started seeing ads for handkerchiefs within my Gmail, and I thought to myself, well, that's very strange. Why am I getting advertised for handkerchiefs? So I didn't know at that point that Google was searching through my Gmail email to customize ads for me. Now, if you go and log into Gmail, you'll see advertisements, and then next to it, there's a button that says, why this ad? And you can click on it, and it explains to you. So now they're doing a little bit more to acknowledge and make you aware of what they're doing. Okay. So that is an introduction to the main concepts from Chapter 7. I hope you enjoy it. It's typically one of the most popular chapters, right up there with ethics and marketing.